so-called Gang of Eight is made up of bipartisan lawmakers, and they're in charge of reviewing highly sensitive intelligence information. It includes the top two congressional leaders in the House and the Senate and the top ranking members on the intelligence committees, which include Democratic Senator Mark Warner and Republican Senator Marco Rubio, both who have also requested an assessment of the potential national security risks associated with Trump's possession of classified documents. Last week, Judge Bruce Reinhardt released the application for the search warrant, revealing potential crimes, including the willful retention of national defense information, concealment or removal of government records, and obstruction of a federal investigation. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, though, has likened that raid to dictatorships that he said some of his constituents have fled.
You know, an FBI raid looking for supposed classified documents is a ridiculous alibi. Unlike anyone else in the federal government, no president can be guilty of illegally handling classified information because a president has complete and final authority to decide whether something's classified or not. The truth is, this raid wasn't about documents. This raid was about trying to disqualify a likely future election opponent.
Well, the former president released this statement saying, "We're now demanding that the Department of Justice be instructed to immediately stop the review of documents illegally seized from my home. All documents have been previously declassified, as well as the appointment of a special master to oversee the handling of the materials taken in the raid." The Florida judge who ordered government prosecutors to submit a redacted version of the affidavit warned on Monday it could be meaningless. The Justice Department has argued against its release, saying it would jeopardize its ongoing investigation. But lawmakers, Bianca, they've also requested to see that affidavit. We are 2 days away from the Justice Department's deadline to get that redacted version to the Florida judge handling this case. And of course, Judge Bruce Reinhardt may propose some redactions of his own.
No, that is the next big date we are all watching, noon on Thursday. Kilmeny Dukart live on Capitol Hill with more on that Gang of Eight. We appreciate it, Kilmeny. And joining us now to discuss these new developments, constitutional law attorney, Newsmax contributor Jenna Ellis. Jenna, great to see you.
Great to see you, Bianca. Thanks.
Well, first, because you have so much knowledge and you were obviously involved with Trump, we want to know what this independent special master means. It seems like it's something he should be getting, and it shouldn't be something he had to file a motion for. I mean, there were things that were taken like passports that they didn't mean to take. What can you tell us about this motion legally, why it is so important?
Well, it's important to ensure that the FBI doesn't overstep and that the president's constitutionally protected rights as now a private citizen remain intact. And so you're right. I mean, it seems ridiculous that he would even have to ask for this. But this is something that I think is wise that he moved for. And what's so ironic here, Bianca, is that while everyone on the left is claiming that President Trump supposedly held illegally classified material, it's probably the FBI who's actually holding illegal documents pursuant to the Fourth Amendment. And so the issue here is whether or not these documents were actually classified. The mainstream media, of course, has gone and continued to report that these documents that were taken by the FBI were classified. But that's an issue that we still don't have an adjudication for. We don't know whether or not these documents at the time that President Trump possessed them were or were not declassified.
Right, exactly. And now, Jenna, we had this report coming out today in the New York Times. Their sources are claiming that 300 classified documents have been seized. The first batch recovered in January by the National Archives. But then we have former Trump administration official Kash Patel, who's speaking to the Wall Street Journal, and he says that those documents were declassified by President Trump when he left office. And part of what he said in an interview, he said the bottom line was he said this information was to get out to the American public. It had to do with Russiagate. It had to do with the Hillary email scandal. It had to do with a whole lot of other stuff. This is all declassified. Where does this break down? What are Americans expected to believe here?
Well, it's interesting now that the Gang of Eight is so interested in these particular documents, right? I think there's a lot of questions around that. But again, the mainstream media is presumptively suggesting that these documents are classified, while clearly President Trump, as well as others, have said that they're not, and that these were declassified. And obviously, the President of the United States, while he is sitting in office, has the final legal authority on whether or not to declassify anything. And so I think that the mainstream media and all of the left, and clearly the FBI, FBI are getting way ahead of themselves by simply suggesting, even on an inventory report, that these are quote unquote top secret or classified documents. Whether or not they put that on the inventory report isn't dispositive of whether or not these documents were actually classified or declassified.
Right.
So I think that we still have to wait to see what are the redactions that the DOJ is asking for on Thursday, what ultimately is released to the public. And I'm with President Trump on this, that I think that the entire affidavit needs to be released in the interest of transparency, in the interest of the rule of law, and for the public interest, because if Merrick Garland even wants to hope that the American people will at all restore our confidence in the DOJ and the FBI, and President Trump is right to put justice in quotation marks, then he has to be fully transparent. There's no reason not to release the entire affidavit. And if that destroys or undermines their case, well, that's kind of the purpose of the Constitution, to make sure we protect the rights of citizens, whether or not that impacts the government.
Yeah, and you know, Thursday is the big day. In that formal order yesterday, it was sort of interesting. Judge Reinhardt kind of reiterated what we all covered with you last Thursday, that just making it a formal order. He says he's still inclined to release parts of the affidavit. We really need to see that, Jenna. And he still could actually just release a totally blacked out, redacted document. Again, we wait for his decision on Thursday, but he says the government has not yet shown these administrative concerns are sufficient to justify sealing. How much hope do you have in this Judge Reinhardt to be transparent and do the right thing here?
Well, he should have recused himself even before he got involved signing the search warrant. And so it looks like a little bit of backpedaling here from him. He should recuse himself even at this stage because of that apparent bias and the fact that just 6 weeks prior to signing off on the search warrant, he recused himself on another matter involving Trump versus Clinton and that lawsuit. So I think here I don't have a lot of confidence in him, but we'll have to see what parts of this are actually released, because even if they're parts like the caption or, you know, the courtroom that this was filed in, that tells us absolutely nothing. It's the key parts that we can analyze what was probable cause here that would justify the raid.
And obviously, you know, the Gang of Eight wants to see it as well. So if it's not released, I think, and it's redacted, is your hope then that the Gang of Eight at least can get some more detail and then further it that route?
They should absolutely try. And, you know, Kevin McCarthy and Marco Rubio here are probably the only two on the Gang of Eight that have an interest here in full truth and transparency. The rest of the players are more political, even though, of course, this, you know, is a bipartisan Gang of Eight. But hopefully we'll get a little bit of truth and transparency from whatever they can discover, and if they are able to see the full unredacted version.
Let's wait and let's see. Jenna Ellis, is always great to have you in for legal analysis. Good to see you today.
Great to see you too, Bianca. Thanks.
Thank you.